And so it's in a way it's a sport, raising money, right? You really gotta continue to do it. Rejection is part of that process. It's nothing to be worried about. You should go into the meetings um, almost with the 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 mindset that you're probably gonna get rejected, but it doesn't matter because you're learning throughout that process, and you will build more skin on your nose, and you'll get better at it. Now, if that is not a rejection, that's an incredible bonus, right? But if you go in with that mindset, you're not going to feel so bad about the rejection because that was kind of what you thought it would be. If you do this opposite of that and you think that every pitch you do, you're going to get the money, you're probably going to start feeling quite bad because, look, the reality is you're going to close, close to one, two, I mean, at best 5% of the pitches you do, unless you're extremely good at it and you've done it for a very long time and you got an incredible idea or you're really far along, right?
Welcome to Risk and Rise, the podcast where we explore the journey of overcoming the fear of failure, embracing risk, and achieving success in entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Talana Simpson, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Together we'll discover the strategies, insights, and shifts in our thinking and attitudes that are needed to turn setbacks into stepping stones and transform fear into fuel for success. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode of Risk and Rise. Hey, it's Risk and Rise time. Thank you for joining me. I'm Talana Simpson, and today we are speaking to someone all the way in Barcelona. It's Richard Nilsson. He is the CEO and founder of MyPetGo, and he is a seasoned serial entrepreneur. So we're going to learn a lot from him about failure, about rejection, and how to pivot and just find ideas and get going. So enjoy the show. Thank you, Richard, for being on Risk and Rise. What comes to mind when you hear that term, Risk and Rise?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to try to share one or two things with fellow aspiring entrepreneurs or just other human beings that want to pick up a nugget or two or just hear the story. So, look, I think Risk and Rise. If we start with risk, life is a risk, right? Everything we do is a risk. We cross the road, depending on where you live, but maybe many times a day you can be hit by a car, right? So life is full of risk, but life is also full of rewards, right? And so, I think some people are more risk prone than others. As an entrepreneur, you have to look at risk, I guess, a bit like the addicted gambler who just can't give up poker or can't give up whatever it may be that he or she is addicted to. But of course, it comes with a degree of being a little bit naive or quite naive and maybe a bit delusional too, where you have a very strong conviction of whatever your thesis may be and whatever your solution to a problem may be, and that kind of is your business or what you're trying to build. I think risk and rise, or risk and reward, is after the risk and you conquer that, the reward comes, or the rise, or you rise with it, right? So yes, like a phoenix from the ashes. So I think it's nothing to be afraid of. Life is full of risk. Crossing the street, taking on a job anywhere else. So why not start your own business? It may be risky, but you can start it when you have another job that pays your income. And so there are ways to mitigate risk and try to get some proof of concept, or as people like to call it in the industry, minimal viable product, or an MVP.
So tell us a bit about your story, about if you briefly share your journey, because I know you have been in the corporate space, so you've been an entrepreneur within your corporate world, and you've moved and started and sold and started countless, many businesses. So maybe you can just give us a brief overview of that, and specifically highlighting if there were any big fears or failures along the way that we can then, look at in more detail.
Yeah, sure. So I think, the elevator pitch of my entrepreneurial journey kind of started as a child seeing both of my parents being entrepreneurs and helping them out. And I guess to a degree, that fostered me into thinking maybe I should do this one day myself, not taking over their businesses, but maybe do my own thing. And so I think I have that instilled in me at an early age, that sort of entrepreneurial inclination and going on that adventure or journey. I then sort of did different things that we could say was quite entrepreneurial. I studied entrepreneurship, one of the first to do that as a cohort in Sweden, when that was not the thing to study. Certainly it's become more common practice today, and most universities across the globe would have some kind of entrepreneurial course or full MBA, which is sort of you start something throughout that uni experience, and that may or may not survive, but it's part of, let's say, the practice part of that course or that whole thing. So I did that, but I did various stuff. I ran nightclub events where I had to find sponsors to kind of partly fund it, and then you sell tickets. So I did that at an early age, from the age of legal drinking, I should say, which in my native country, Sweden, is 18 if you go to the club, but if you go to the liquor store, it's 20. Quite odd. But that's how it is. It's an odd country in many ways. I sort of was a tennis trainer and coach and run summer camps and, did a lot of different things. But I think post the uni course, I worked in banking, and it was very sales related, quite boring, very dry. And this opportunity came to kind of move to Hong Kong. I was 21, I suppose. And, me and two buddies decided to, take that risk that we discussed earlier to kind of move there. We had nothing to lose. We were, young enough that we could go there and kind of set something up. And if that didn't work, 6 months later, we could go back, and hopefully we would have that would have been an education in itself. Our idea at that time was to build the first sort of luxury and lifestyle publishing / community where people could meet online and congregate and share, images and stories and ideas and whatnot. And also having an event guide and so on and so forth. And why Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong was, a very vibrant and interesting place, full of yappies or early adopters. Everything was sort of Cantonese language. So we wanted to do something in English that could speak to the international Cantonese, which is, the locals in Hong Kong, for those that don't know, and also to the expat community, which was, young bankers and people in fashion and what we call the Henrys, high earners, not yet rich. I might have got that a little bit wrong, but it doesn't matter. I think people understand. And so we built that kind of magazine, and from there to Singapore, from Singapore to Thailand, from Thailand to Malaysia, and then we sold that to a big German tech and media conglomerate. And stay with them for a while as an entrepreneur, as you said earlier, and then kind of went on to the pet industry. And I missed a lot of things. We had one of the leading marketplaces in the Canton region. that was bilingual. Canton region is the Pearl Delta River going from sort of Hong Kong into Shenzhen, into Guangzhou. And that was, you could put an ad up in, and it's all Cantonese in that region, right? Not Mandarin. And so we did that. You could put an ad up. It's a traditional marketplace. You want to sell something, new or old. You put an ad up, and it's supply and demand, right? So there is a seller, there's a buyer, and we were sort of the connector there in that equation. And you could put an ad in English, it will translate to Cantonese or vice versa. And that was quite early. That was like 05, 06. So yeah, that gives you a snapshot.
Yes. And so right now you are the co-founder and CEO of, it's called MyPetGo. That's
right. So now I'm in the pet space. So a pivot, as we would say in the entrepreneurial world, pivot of category. There is a lot of similarities to some of the things I've done previously, in that I'm communicating with millennials and Gen Z primarily. And this is what I used to do with the publishing business. I went into the digital publishing business because the traditional publishing business was so analog. You were reading yesterday's news tomorrow. And so we wanted to address that by being the first with the latest every day, as instantaneous as possible. And I guess now what we're doing is we're leveraging real-time data, health markers, so heart rate, pulse rate, respiration rate, temperature, the core vitals for a dog. And it's a bit like a Whoop strap, this sort of thing. What that reports upon is what we report upon in a dog-centric way. So we're dogs only at the moment. And, that's been going for 4 years. It's a very fun, exciting industry to be in. I mean, I'm 4 years in this industry, and thankfully I get invited to speak at a lot of panels and the Pet Care Innovation Summit and all the various big things where the who's who meet up and congregate. So I managed to elbow myself into, I guess, the pet sector, and there you go.
And part of that journey into the MyPetGo is, I know in your email that you sent to me that you raised $3.7 million. Is that correct for that?
Yeah. It's probably, in total, it's more like 6+ million. But yeah, that's right. The latest raise was that amount of money. That was quite recently. It's fun to raise money if you manage to do it. It's not so fun when you get, rejections, but that happens, that comes with it, right? So, it's just part of what you have to endure. There will be a lot of, the more people that say no, the more right you might be in your thesis, right? That you're seeing something, but you're very early, and your job is to try to bring these naysayers into that future of yours, right? To see what you see. You look in the crystal ball and you say, look, one day this is going to be a no-brainer. People are going to this is maybe going to be even the standard, right? Which is what we think for the dogs. Like, every pet owner would want to know how their dog is feeling physically and emotionally, because dogs don't talk, right? Unless you speak doggy. And therefore, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, we've taken this, a way further, in that when we spot possible issues with the data, when it's out of range, we call it, like medically, we call it out of range, then we alert you and we give you a next step recommendation who can help you with this problem that we've discovered. So it is an ecosystem platform model. I think one of the issues I had in my previous life as a publisher was that it was very hard to compete with the Facebooks and the Googles and all the platform players, because they got all the data, they got all the users, right? So they have both supply and demand, and all that rich data that they can do very exciting stuff with. And so, yeah, I think that was, something that maybe want to kind of build that platform, but now it's the pet tech sector. So we can connect you to that solution being often a service provider or product.
Great. So I wanted to look now. We got a sense of your journey, your story,
Mm-hmm.
And you said something very interesting there in this current business with raising all those funds. There's always the rejection, and I think a lot of people fear starting or even asking for money because then they have to like almost put their self out there. And there's a good chance. I mean, I believe if you ask, you've got a 50% chance of a yes and a no. So how do you manage that fear of rejection? Is it there? How have you handled the rejections you have received?
Well, look, I'm only human, right? But I think the more you do it, the easier it gets to don't take it personal, right? Which maybe I did back in the days. I would say, what an asshole, didn't even pay attention, and and the truth is, begging for money is never fun, and there's a lot of people begging for money, right? Which is essentially what you're doing, right? You're going out, you're asking people to give you their hard-earned money, be it angels, be it VCs, be it anybody else. And that is not fun, but very necessary. And the thing is, once you've done one meeting and then a second meeting and a third meeting, you get a rhythm and you get better at it, and you get better at your pitch. You get better at understanding, what are the things that people wanted to hear more about or less about, and you can kind of be a bit more focused. But it's like anything, you play tennis, the more you practice, the better you will get, right? And so it's in a way, it's a sport, raising money, right? You really gotta continue to do it. Rejection is part of that process. It's nothing to be worried about. You should go into the meetings almost with the mindset that you're probably gonna get rejected, but it doesn't matter because you're learning throughout that process, and you will build more skin on your nose, and you'll get better at it. Now, if that is not a rejection, that's an incredible bonus, right? But if you go in with that mindset, you're not going to feel so bad about the rejection because that was kind of what you thought it would be. If you do this opposite of that, and you think that every pitch you do, you're going to get the money, you're probably going to start feeling quite bad because, look, the reality is you're going to close, close to 1, 2, I mean, at best 5% of the pitches you do, unless you're extremely good at it and you've done it for a very long time and you got an incredible idea, or you're really far along, right? But I think, look, the way one could start to raise money is what we call family and friends. And that is, you start with the network you have, you raise smaller money. The smaller money then helps you to kind of drag on and get further along, and then you can try to raise some more money. That's usually family and friends, and then angels, which could be people you may not know, but you get an introduction from maybe a family and a friend to someone who likes to invest in early stage startups, right, or ventures, and then you kind of go on. Now, raising money from professional investors versus non-professional investors is quite different, right? Your pitch may be the same to a large degree, but the professional investors, they are investing other people's money. Therefore, they're going to scrutinize what you're selling them, which is what you're going to do. You're going to sell them promises that, you're going to take it from here to there, and it's worth this much now, and it's going to be worth this much in the future. They're going to look at it differently because they are, if we talk about risk again, they are very careful. I think in particular today, because there's been a big correction, And when I talk about raising money, I'm coming from a technology kind of angle, right? So tech broadly, right? If you're raising money for a restaurant, you're raising money for, something else, the VCs are probably not what you want to go to. You want to go to a different type of investor, right? Maybe an investment vehicle that is investing into hospitality only, if, let's say it's a restaurant, right? So there's different kinds. I think what I would make sure that everybody does when they try to raise funds is that do your homework on who you're pitching, try to understand what they know about this particular niche that you're in. And if it's a professional investor like a venture capitalist firm, make sure it fits what you're pitching is, make sure that it fits their mandate. So the mandate might be we invest, 500K to $1 million, only Series A. We only tag along bigger other investors. And if you're at a much earlier stage, that's a waste of your time to a degree. But also it's, some of these guys want to look at the companies for quite some time. And so it could be maybe for your future round. So it's always good to network as well. But I think, the professional investors can unfortunately be quite arrogant. You may never hear back from them again, though they may tell you different once your call is sort of over and finished. And that's just how it is, right? And that's nothing to take personal. That they are listening to pitches all the time, and they just don't have the bandwidth, and nor do they have the money. A lot of funds might say we've raised 200 million, but they don't have 200 million in the bank, right? They might have some commitments from what's called a limited partner, who then is the one who invests his or her money into this fund to the GPs that run it, the general partners. And so there's a lot of other debt solutions today that people can look at as well. So debt is obviously where you loan money. Of course, the earlier you are, the harder that is. But there is a lot of debt for younger companies today that one can look at as well. So you got to look at everything.
Oh, sure, a lot of options then. But the main thing is to go in not expecting to get the money. It's a bonus if you get it, and your rejection's part of the journey. Have you ever failed then in some of your businesses that you've done? Has there been a project that's failed or a phase that's failed? And what would you have defined as a failure? What did you experience?
I mean, look, I've failed far more than I've succeeded with things, I think, and that is also part of the entrepreneurial journey. If you go into something with a strong conviction and then you are, partly naive, partly delusional, you're gonna be wrong about a lot of things, and that's when the pivot comes in, right? So you have this idea and you say, look, we're going to sell sandwiches with butter and chocolate and, sliced oranges on them, right? And you think you're going to sell millions of these sandwiches because it's just a unique flavor combination and nobody does it and it's different. And you're going to sell it at these AI vending machines that can feed them out. They're super fresh and they're just amazing, right? Okay. And you then go and build this, you manage to get a few machines, your prototypes, you set them up, you get the bread and everything, and it's fresh and nice, but nobody buys it, right? So either your whole conviction is wrong, or maybe your flavor combination was wrong, right? And this is when you got to start experiment and do testing. This is how we learn. We get feedback from the potential sandwich eater. And, that guy or girl might tell us that the flavor combination was completely awful, right? It doesn't work. But if I would switch out, they say if you switch out the oranges for strawberry or raspberry, it might really work. So you then go and do that and you try again and maybe you sell a few and people are willing to pay some money for it. And then you're onto something. So the pivot, as we call it, the changes we make can be very subtle and they can be very big, right? It could be, So that's a subtle one. You're changing the flavor. A big one would be, look, these sandwiches should be sold at cafes, and we should make them at, at a distribution center, or at a center location, and then bring them to these cafes, and then they sell by themselves by the people behind the counter. And maybe that's a distribution pivot change, right? So you have different kind of pivots you can make, and I think I'll give you a recent example with my pet business, MyPetGo. We started out as a GPS and health monitor, right? So we were tracking location and whereabouts, and we were tracking kind of health. And then we said, nah, let's not do the GPS one. There's so many other people doing that, and they do it quite well. And, it comes with complications of scalability. It comes with complications of draining battery and all these other things. So we said, what if we, what is it that people want, right? And people are used to the Oura Ring and the Whoop strap and the Apple Watch and the Garmins and the Polars and the Samsung Galaxies and all these different things. What if we could mimic that, but for your pet, right? Wouldn't that be of interest, right? We have this data-driven Gen Z, millennial kind of target audience, which is the largest group of pet owners today and the fastest growing, right? And so these are data-driven folk. They are doing everything on their mobile phone, be it work, be it buying something, be it consuming content, be it anything else. Everything happens on their mobile phone. So it's only natural that everything concerning their pet's well-being happens on the mobile phone. So what if we can consolidate the pet shores? What if we can have this data-driven approach? This has occurred. This is what you can do with it, and here's a solution for you. And then pinpoint. You need to buy more food. Here's how you get your insurance. Here's where you can store your insurance documentations. You need to book a grooming session. Something is up with this health value. Here is a vet over a telemedicine call. And by the way, you can share this data, these health markers with that vet so that the person can triage from the other side. What if we could do all this stuff? And so our conviction started with, let's do a double straddle. And then that changed to health, wellness. Then we said health and longevity. So now we're a health and longevity monitor. We've been pivoting over the last 2 years, I would say. And now we're quite happy with our conviction where we are. And we've gone from sort of direct to consumer to B2B to consumer, right? So we've changed the distribution model. We've changed what the product does. We have, gone back and forth on pricing strategy, right? We've changed the USP of the product, the unique selling point, and the list goes on and on. And a lot of that was things we had to do out of necessity, because what we'd done before was, it failed, right? It didn't work, and therefore we had to make the change or pivot. So look, I've made endless mistakes, and what I try to do is to learn from the past, bring into the present, right? Where you sort of say, look, this thing didn't work. Sometimes those learnings are very important, but sometimes you also have to question those learnings, because the timing was maybe not right with what I did 10 years ago, but today the time could be perfect for some of these things. So you can't always take a learning from one venture and apply it to the other venture. If there's a different geo market, let's say I did a lot of things in Asia before, that might not be true for Europe or North America, let's say, or South Africa. So you have to challenge your own learning sometimes, but of course there are things you pick up and you try to make that your standard, right? So yeah, so it depends, but I've made every possible mistake you can make in entrepreneurship across one of the ventures. So yeah, that's part of it. But I'm still alive.
Yeah, and I think that's what people need to know, that it's not the end of the world when it's a mistake. It's a learning opportunity, and that's what I hear from you, is that you take the learning and you pivot. You do something with it in order to improve the business and make it different to what it started off with. What about any inner work? Have there been any moments where it's really like hit you in the gut and you've had to find some resilience within, or is there a mindset that you believe has helped you or is helping you with those down moments?
Yeah. So I can start with some of the down moments. I mean, there's been many, right? I mean, I've had what we call near death experiences many times, right? And this is unfortunately part of the entrepreneurial journey. So anybody thinking about it, it's nothing to be worried about. It is just how it is. So let's say you have a job. You say, look, I would really want to try to be my own boss and build my own thing. That's fine, right? I suggest that everybody should try to be an entrepreneur once in their lifetime, and or twice maybe. I think it gets a lot harder when you have, let's say, a family and you have a lot of fixed bills to pay in end of the month. It's a lot easier when you're young. So I always recommend people to try to do it straight out of uni. Maybe don't even finish uni. Maybe don't even go to uni. Right? I don't know. Honestly, because the entrepreneurial world is so incredibly different from what they teach you at university. You can have an MBA and think you know everything, but MBA people are fit to work in organizations that are existing big businesses. They're not great for entrepreneurship or startups, unfortunately. And that's why a lot of companies out there don't tend to hire too much on education. Like I look at experience, and I look at is this a person that can take this very challenging environment, and of course you never know that, but I think experience and the right mindset is a lot more important than education many times in the startup world, right? And so I think back to uni, and I'm like, is there anything I learned that I actually could apply? Very little, to be honest, right? So I think, the entrepreneurial journey is really the real MBA, right? The real life MBA and the real education. I know I sort of deviated a little bit from your question, but I think near death experiences happens all the time. I've had several where the companies I've built have been very close to bankruptcy. You have to tell staff that, look, we're gonna have to defer salaries, and you don't take a salary yourself, and your family is affected, and you live on credit, or you live on going to the pawn shop with whatever you have to kind of loan against that, or you got to ask your family. That's part of it. I think I built this media business that I had in my previous life over 10 years, and then sold it, and we built that up with only $1 million, which is very little. If you think of it over a 10-year period, that's $100K a year in raised funds. But we built that to a cash flow positive business, to a business that had a 35% profit margin. So it was really good at a time where nobody in media and digital media certainly made any money, right? Everybody was losing money and raising tons of money. And so I think, having been close to bankruptcy many times, and you really start thinking, maybe we were wrong about this conviction. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe this is just, maybe we should just throw in the towel. But in that sense, I'm a little bit like Donald Trump. Never give up. You just keep on going forward. And as much as people, disagree with that, man, you got to give him I got to applaud him for his entrepreneurial vigor. He just doesn't give up. Nothing seems to bother him. He just moves forward. Maybe it's easy if you have a few billion in your bank account, but nonetheless, I think he's gone through a lot of tough stuff over the last few years. Lost a lot of money going into politics, trying to help his native country. Quite admirable to do that when he could just be playing golf at Mar-a-Lago. And so he's the only one who's lost money, and all the other people that are trying to fight for the same position, they make money in the political world. Anyways, we're not here to talk about that. So near-death experiences. How do I like what is the inner workings? I think, thankfully I have a spiritual wife who has been with me through, most of my entrepreneurial journey. So she's been with me for 13 years, which is not the whole time, but where we've been married for quite some time. So let's see, for about 10 years, 11 years, 10 years. Might got that a little bit wrong. And so, her spirituality, because I'm Swedish and we're sort of atheists, most of us, right? Believe in nothing. But we're kind of born Protestant Christians, right? So she kind of made me go full circle into being sort of a newborn Christian. And so I guess praying in the morning, meditating, and believing that there is something supernatural out there, right, has helped me, and I do this every day, and it sets me on a straight path. I also exercise. I think you get a lot of anxiety as an entrepreneur. You get additional anxiety because you're dealing with problem solving left and right. So I think sweating that out is also a very good tactics. And I think, sitting down, trying to kind of look at what's the low hanging fruit. How can we turn this issue around? What should I focus on to fix this problem, and only focus on that one thing? Don't try to do everything else, right? And so let's say you're close to bankruptcy. Like, okay, how can I pay the bills? How do I fix this, right? Go raise money. Can I loan it? And you try to be really focused. And then once you've solved that, if you can solve it, then what's the next low hanging fruit that you can move on to? But for me, spirituality and exercise has been kind of the inner workings of kind of pushing through those tough times. But there's been many of them. I mean, they continue until today. So.
That's interesting. And you spoke obviously then about the support from your wife. You also have a co-founder, and I think somewhere I read what's the terminology used, so that you were an acquired founder. I don't know what you mean by that, if you can maybe just explain, but what is the value of having a co-founder, and how does that help in those near-death experiences?
Well, yeah, I mean, it helps because the problems are being shared with some other, hopefully bright minds, where you can kind of congregate and figure out things together. So I had two co-founders in the venture that I sold. An acquired founder is someone who has sold a venture successfully, right? So you take it from nothing to an exit, you sell it successfully, right? And someone pays for that, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And so right now I'm more of a solo founder. Do I have sort of a co-founder as well? But I'm a bit more solo in this. And that was how I wanted to set it up. So there are pros and cons, right? I can make decisions faster. I don't have to consult two other people, which I had to do in my previous life. But I don't have the same sounding board that I had before. However, I got a big advisory panel and group that are helping me with, my sort of thoughts, and if there is problems, I go to them depending on what the problem is. I got different advisors for different issues, right? And so that's quite helpful. I didn't really have that advisory board in the previous life. So a lot of things I've done differently from what I did, let's say, in the publishing industry. And some things I do the same. I never learn, basically.
ask a bit, if we like shift focus a bit to just the landscape of entrepreneurship, because you've had a lot of experience in Europe, specifically Spain, Barcelona, and then Asia. You're based a lot in Singapore, and you've been in Hong Kong. So, and obviously I'm in South Africa, and we're talking a lot here in South Africa about how we can grow entrepreneurship. And specifically, I have an interest in how to help people overcome that fear of failure of starting something, because there's a risk to being an entrepreneur. But yet we are desperate for entrepreneurs so that we can stimulate the economy, and create more jobs. So I just wondered, from your experience then, like, are there any specific issues that you see in your landscape, in the different climates, landscapes, so Asia versus Europe? Are there differences? Because I'm just interested in, like, culturally, do we approach starting businesses differently? Do we have different mindsets around failure? Have you noticed anything that maybe we could learn from, or just be interesting?
Yeah, I think, look, I know a lot of very entrepreneurial people from South Africa, right? I think if we look at the pet industry, we got the people at Rogs, which is dog and cat collars, I think, and harnesses and other things. I think they've done a really quite good job there, right? And so there is a lot into the discovery guys that have done amazingly well in the insurance industry, and they built things like Vitality that has traveled to, I think, 33 markets, partnering with insurance companies and really transforming these insurance companies in really a pivotal way, right? So I think there is a lot of entrepreneurial, not that I like to speak of it, but some of your ancestors, obviously, through the colonial days, they were quite entrepreneurial, at least where they came from. There's been quite a lot of entrepreneurship. So I think there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs there. Now, there is a question always around the fear mongering in starting your own thing, and what if I fail, and is that accepted? I think where I come from in Sweden, we're very entrepreneurial, but bankruptcy and failing has been something that people until relatively recently have sort of looked upon as, what a crook. He raised money or she raised money, and look, nothing came out of it, right? Whereas in the US, it's completely normal to do multiple things and fail. And I think so the Americans, therefore, they have a different inclination to entrepreneurship. Anybody could make it, right? Which was the thing with the US, right? Back in the days. And I think that holds true, though US has a lot of issues today, but you have, it's a big market as well. So I think if we look at Singapore, a lot of the entrepreneurs have had to be imported into Singapore, right? And it's historically been that way. So the government had to start all the businesses back in the days. Like the government started the banks and the telecom business and the airline, which is obviously Singapore Airlines, and the list goes on, right? Because there was just a complete lack of local entrepreneurs. And I think still today, most of the successful companies there are like expat driven, but it could be expats from neighboring countries. Doesn't have to be sort of Western expats in that sense, right? So I think, the world is being a lot more open-minded about startups and young ventures and all of this, because it's going to drive the future, right? It's going to provide most of the jobs, and it's part of this fourth industrial revolution, which is technology, right? So I think some countries are more mature in how they embrace failure, and other countries are less so. But I think all countries will, in a not too distant future, look at it as the Americans. It's only normal. It's part of the process. You will fail, but get up again and go again, right? And I think that mentality takes time. I think if the government in each country helps to kind of foster that don't be afraid, dive in, they give some grants, they give some incentives. If you do this, then we'll give you this, or you get this tax break, or I think it's in the government's interest to really do more of this. But I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing across the globe is very badly managed countries by the political elite that, frankly speaking, don't care much about the little person or any person, apart from themselves. And so I don't think we can put too much hope into governments because, their agenda is very different. So I think we see this everywhere, right? And people are starting to revolt. They're starting to feel it. They know it. We're smarter today. We got the tools to help us. So I think, having a good community in the country of fellow entrepreneurs that can help. So the older entrepreneurs need to help the younger ones, right? And that's part of what we have to do. We have to help the younger entrepreneurs. It is our duty and our responsibility to help the juniors as a senior, right? And so I think, having that community is something that's very important. Investors, senior entrepreneurs helping junior entrepreneurs. If the government could give some grants and incentives, fantastic. But if they don't really care that much, then it is what it is. Making sure that there is a support system and people that can help, and so I think that's helpful. If I look at Barcelona, there's about 2,500 startups here, technology startups. So there is a big ecosystem, and the ecosystem has everything from banks that are targeting early startups, not the old banks. These are new neo banks. They're only online, and everything is different, right? But you got to have a plethora of people that can come and work. So you're looking at what's the supply of skilled engineers or people that can work for you. Is there a way to bring people to the market? Like, you want AI engineers from, say, India. Can I bring them anywhere? So Spain is very good because they have a tech visa. So you can bring people from anywhere and they get a flat tax rate of 24%. So I think, there are a lot of ways for governments to get involved and be smart about it. And because a lot of people in tech are nomads. Think of it, right? You want to get nomads to come to your country and create more jobs and come and work there and pay something as opposed to nothing. Have a low cap kind of 20-ish% tax. You'll get a lot of Americans. You get a lot of, Europeans. You get people from all over the world. So I think I think the ingredients kind of look the same worldwide, but let's see. Maybe some of your big entrepreneurs need to step it up over there and try to put together some programs and some things to kind of get the young guys to kind of rise up.
And with that, I'm also quite interested if you have any advice then, or that you would give to, because for me, the other side of the coin, the one side is us as entrepreneurs. We need to find the courage to start, to take the risk. And yes, there needs to be an ecosystem that can support those people. So part of that ecosystem is like society at large. People that don't want to start a business, how could they be more supportive and encouraging of those that do? Is there any message for them that would help?
Well, yeah,
that are scared to take the leap? Yeah.
Well, they could say, look, I think you should do this, right? And if you do this, I will support you in doing this, and maybe I can come and work for you, right? I could be one of your early champions. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but I'd be willing to come and work for you and help you with your mission and vision. And so I think, for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, to some it comes very natural, right? To sort of, they discover this problem, they believe they have sort of a solution to that problem. They believe that the problem is either big enough right now or could be big enough in the future, and therefore they want to do this thing, and they have super strong conviction. Others are accidental entrepreneurs. They kind of get pushed into it, right? It's like, yeah, I'm thinking of starting my own thing, but I'm not sure. I'd really like to get that paycheck in end of the month, and I like to work 9 to 5, and I don't want to. And those people really need that support, and they need help with that conviction of whatever it is that they're going to do, right? And entrepreneurship is so broad that it could be that you're a lawyer at the law firm, but you're thinking of going solo, right? And setting up your own practice, and then you're going to hire some other people, right? But you're not sure, and there is the complicated contract that you're tied into, and you can't steal customers away with you, but maybe they could come to you, and there's all these nuances to it. But I think entrepreneurship should be viewed by people as something that others do almost as a noble cause, because it will create jobs and it will help the economy, and it will help. And I think if more people view it that way, and of course we can't say that that's the case if you're into some illegal type of business, then that's obviously illegal and it's bad. But let's sort of focus on the good stuff here. I think we shouldn't glorify it, but we should say, look, it's fantastic that you're doing this thing, and you have all the right intentions, and you want to create jobs, and you want to do all the stuff, right? So I think that support from the average Joe is quite important.
Yeah. Great. So as we're coming to the end here, can I ask you a few rapid fire questions just for fun? So whatever pops into your head. What comes to mind when I say risk?
Reward.
What is your secret weapon for bouncing back from a setback?
Jesus Christ.
What's the most important lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Have faith in more things than myself.
What's the best advice that you've ever received as an entrepreneur?
Well, ask yourself if you would hire the same person that you felt so strongly about 30 days after you've hired that person, after the first 30 days when you've been working together. Because it usually looks very different 30 days in.
So just to explain this, so you're saying the advice was 30 days later, ask yourself the question again, and then obviously whatever that answer is, you would action it?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there are so many, so that's really a tough one. But I think I very seldom fire anybody. I try not to give up on people. I try to find a way. Just the way I am. But I think I think that's something that it's good advice that someone gave me, and I think it's quite true. But there are so many others.
What inspires you to get out of bed in the morning?
Helping dogs getting healthier and helping pet owners becoming better caretakers.
Yeah, they're so important, our pets. All right, so maybe you can just wrap up then by asking you, for all those aspiring entrepreneurs out there, the ones that really have some kind of interest in starting something, making the leap, what would be your top tip, your best advice to them, especially if they're battling with that fear of failure, taking the risk?
I mean, look, I think when I started out as an entrepreneur, some 20 plus years ago, there was, um, and I should correct that by saying, as a technology entrepreneur, we had just come out of the dot-com crash, right? There were a lot of people that thought that internet and anything that was built on the internet was a gimmick or a fly, and it would disappear, and it wasn't here to stay, right? I think today we can truly say we're seeing the fourth industrial revolution, and it's incredible. Now we're in this world of artificial intelligence. There is just so much happening at such a rapid speed, and it's a very exciting time to kind of get stuck into tech. But I think, what can I recommend people to do? So with the backstory that I just gave, today there is a lot of successful people that you can go and ask for advice, ask them to become a mentor, maybe to help you out. I think a lot of people are very afraid of asking. Don't be afraid of asking. The senior entrepreneur's duty is to help the junior entrepreneurs. So go and find a senior entrepreneur that knows your niche, understands your industry, that is proven, that has done it before, and say you're building this and you would like, their opinion and their help. And quite often they would say, sure. And the way to find them could be Google who is a mover and shaker in that particular niche of yours, right? Or go to LinkedIn and do the same thing. So find a mentor, number one. Number two, I would say there is an enormous amount of good resources online for how to build a venture, for how to start. There's tons of discount codes to get your server set up and whether you want to build some website early on and all these things. So there is coupons, discount codes. There is a lot of accelerators and things you can join and apply for. And even if you don't get picked up, there tends to be tons of these freebies that they give out, which could be worth tens of thousands of dollars, which are the basic stuff that you're going to need, server, and so you get server credits, et cetera, et cetera. So resources, look at the accelerators, try to think, is there a way for me to keep what I'm doing at the moment? Let's say you got a job and it's paying the bills. For how long can I do this and then spend evenings, lunch breaks, and weekends on building this other thing that I want to do? And at the right time, I can then shift over when I maybe raised a little bit of money, so I can pay myself a little bit of money. Don't be afraid to pay yourself some sort of salary. You're going to have to do that to survive, right? That's really important. And any investor who says, I don't want you to pay anything else, tell them to fuck off. Really, if they can live on nothing, good for them, but nobody can. And, that's just how it is, right? And so I think, that's probably the things I would look at, and don't be afraid. If you don't try, you don't know. It could be a massive success, right? We just don't know. And if not, you try it and it didn't work out, I'm sure you will learn tons of things that will make you a better corporate person. You can always go back to the corporate world. Actually, a lot of companies look at the fact that you've done something entrepreneurial as something quite positive. I would say almost in all cases, even if that was a failure, right? Because you then have that entrepreneurial inclination, which companies need too, right? They need innovation. So I think that's good. And look, that's what I would do. Don't be too afraid. Life is too short. You never know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Richard, how can people get hold of you? I realize I haven't asked yet. They want to.
Yeah. So look, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur and you want a second opinion, you need something, you can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Nilsson. That's Richard TH, obviously. And then Nilsson, Nilsson. You can find me there, and you can DM me, and I'll get back to you. And as I said earlier, it's the senior entrepreneur's duty to help the junior one. So happy to help anybody with something, be it a phone call, be it a connection, be it anything else.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Always fun.
This has been Risk and Rise with me, Talana Simpson. Thank you for listening, and please do like us on your favorite podcast app. So I hope you've learned as much as I have today from Richard Nilsson, and I hope you take his attitude around rejection and not taking it personally, and that it's a great, great way to learn and develop, and that you will find success somewhere along the road so that you can start risking and rising with me together. Thank you for joining me on Risk and Rise, where we face fears, conquer challenges, and rise above adversity to achieve our dreams. Find out more at riskandrise.co.za.